Hello and welcome to Library Drawing Party. Today we're going to be drawing this beautiful waterfall. To get started, we're going to be doing a watercolor base using our rainbow watercolor set. Now to start, let's do the foreground. So I'm using a light green. And I'm just doing some short strokes. So I have the strokes going this way, and now I'm going to alternate and go to the opposite direction to show the movement of the grasses. So we're trying to create this hilly landscape that we're viewing the waterfall from. We're going to be adding more details in with our colored pencils. This is just to get us started. There's also a patch of brown right about here. You can add that in. And then put some more grasses nearby. You can go darker in spots to show the variation of the colors. Let's use a dark green now. And let's start placing the trees. The trees start in the top left-hand corner. And my brush is pretty dry right now, so I want to show the texture of the trees. And then we have some trees below. I can see the silhouette of some of the trees, so I'm going in and adding some darker tones to help create those silhouettes. But we're going to be adding more color with our colored pencils, so this is just to help a little bit more depth. If your watercolor set at home only has one kind of green, you can add some blue or even purple or brown to get a darker tone. And for a lighter tone, you can add some yellow or orange. And let's work on this side. So we have a nice big tree over here. And then some trees above, rocky mountain ledge. And then we have some trees in the background behind the waterfall. For this whole thing, I'm keeping my brush pretty dry because I want to have the texture. Okay, now we have an idea of where we want the trees to go. Let's start adding in the waterfall and the ledge. Let's start with the ledge. So I'm using a brown, and I'm gonna paint in this section of white. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And I want the strokes to go horizontal because the lines of the ledge are going horizontal. Like if you're looking at a rock, if you're looking at a mountainside with cut rock, you'll see lots of lines that when you get into geology will tell you about the age of the rock and what happened those years. So remember, make sure that we're capturing those lines in our drawing. The ledge is not totally brown. It's got some blue in it too. So I'm adding in some blue for some shading. We want this to be pretty light. This is just giving an extra depth of color. If you find that you put a lot of blue down, you can always just pick it up with your brush and move it somewhere else. And if you don't have anywhere else in the ledge that you want to add, you can start working on your waterfall using that blue. Now we want our waterfall to show the lines coming down. And then when it hits the bottom, there's going to be a lot of foam. So we want to keep this pretty white. And then there's the river coming out of the waterfall. It's got a lot of movement. So we want to see colors, but because it's a waterfall and a river, you can add some water in. This is a good place to add water because you will be recreating what you're trying to show. No better way to show water than by using water. Alright, I'm adding little patches with some darker blue. It's the same blue, I'm just adding more pigment so it's coming out darker. This way we can see the movement a little bit more. I'm going to add in waterfall in the background here. You can just hint at it going through the trees. We don't need to see everything. If you dab your brush, then you can get some spots. Help with the foam. We're going to do a little bit more work with the foam later on. Anything you can do to help achieve the effect is good. Okay, now next step, let's take our brown and add in some of the river's edge next to water. This is almost like a beach here, but because there's a river and not the ocean, it's going to be brown. Probably going to be little patches of brown in the river. And when you have your brush nice and dry, you can add some of those lines in to your ledge. Add in some more blue. Now that we have our waterfall established, let's take our light green. Again, if you don't have light green in your color palette, just add some yellow to your green. And then you can dab that in for highlights. We'll be adding more color with the colored pencils. But this way we can get started and see some of that color coming through. Then our last step is to take some of our blue and add that in for our sky. And we can see that this is a nice, calm, peaceful day. You can actually blend some of that blue into the further away trees to show the distance. And there you have it. That's our watercolor base. And we'll be adding our colored pencils in shortly. See you soon. For the colored pencil portion of our drawing, we're going to be adding in some of those details that will really make this drawing pop. So to get started, let's start with the trees. And let's start with the trees in the foreground. So you're going to take your dark green, and then you're going to start to define trees. So I was doing V shapes and having the branches go up. So I'm drawing small dashes. This side they're going to the right, and then this side they'll go to the left. And then you can throw in some other directions similar to cross hatching so that it doesn't look too uniform. Then let's go ahead and do another tree. When we were doing our watercolor, we left some parts lighter than others, so we're gonna want to put most of our trees in the darker sections of our watercolor. But having that light green in the background will help keep the forest feel while still showing the amount of trees, as this is a tree-laden mountaintop. Okay, once you have your tree branches in, you can add in some highlights with a lighter green. You want the edges here to be lighter as you see the sunlight coming down. This is a good way to fill in those sections that we left lighter without losing the definition that we created. And then you can use a really light green, maybe even a yellow. Really bring out those highlights. You can add in some tan. Or maybe some gold. Gold would be nice for the tree trunks, so you can add some in to suggest trunks. Okay, then let's move on to the other side. Yep, this section right here is mossy. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of darker tones and then blend it out with some of this medium green. And then finally use that light green, bring the moss all the way out to the river's edge and the waterfall. Now let's hint at the trees by putting in some lines. I'm not going to go as dark as I did on the other side. I want to show that these trees are a little different. They're a little bit more stacked. Let's use our medium green. Then our light green. What's great about the watercolor base is that if you don't get everything with your colored pencils, then you'll still see the watercolors behind it. Okay, let's move up top to these trees. And there's darker trees along cliff edge. We'll focus on that right now. Same thing on this side. And I'll take the medium green and blend it in more. And the light green. There's a brown rock up here, so we can add in some brown. And even add in some blue. And then we have some trees in the distance. Now we want these to be pretty faded. So you want your lines to be pretty blurry. And then we're gonna use our dark blue and go horizontally instead of vertically like we've been doing for the trees. Help blend it in with the sky. Let's take our light blue and start to outline the river in the background. And then let's add in some more definition to our waterfall to show how hard the water is falling. And then let's add some swirls in the bottom of the river. Let's take our dark blue and add some more swirls. This will show the movement of the water. Let's add some more definition to our waterfall. You can take your brown and add in beach. This beach most likely have dirt, which is why we're using brown. You can add some gold in if you want to add in a little bit of sandy tone to it. And even add in some beach on the other side. And then if you want to add in some rapids, you can take your correction fluid or white paint. You can add in some dots and some longer waves to show the movement. You can add in some extra flare at the bottom to show how the waves are hitting the edge of the river. You can add in some lines, your waterfall. You can bulk up the foam. You can add in some white. You don't want to add too much white in the background because it'll draw your eye up there. Now if you put in too much white, it's okay. Once that dries, we'll put in some more blue and it'll blend in with the trees. Now let's work on the cliff edge. So the cliff has horizontal lines. So we want our movements to be horizontal, but they can have a bit of a curve to them too. Some parts can be darker than others. We can use our dark blue like a reflection from the waterfall. And it also gives it a little bit more shadow. Then you can help define sections. You can even use some of that sandy color. I'm going to add in a little bit more of a darker tone so we can see some of the interesting rock formations. And the movement of the cliff. I'm going to put in a little bit of a darker edge where the tree line is. Give it a bit of shadow. And use some of our blue to really emphasize that shadow. I'm using blue instead of black or gray to help bring in the blue tones from the waterfall. So once you're happy with your waterfall, then we can move on to the grass below. So you're going to want to just put some of this dark green that we use for the trees. You can just scatter it throughout. You want to show the movement of the grass. So you want the grass to be going every direction, but mostly vertical. Let's take some of our medium green. And our light green. This is a wild meadow, so we wouldn't be thinking about getting manicured like your lawn, so it's okay if the grass is long and going in every direction, so it'll feel more natural. Now there's a little bit of a yellow flower peeking out of the top of the grass, so let's add in some yellow. Also gives a nice highlight. Can add in some of that sandy color too. And then we have some dirt peeking out, so we can use our dark brown. And add that in a bit more. We can add in some more grass on top of it to blend it in. And maybe a little bit more flowers to the side. And there you have it, that's our waterfall. Thank you for joining us in Library Drawing Party. We hope to see you again. We have library drawing parties every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the Mercer County Library System's Facebook page and our YouTube channel. So thank you for tuning in and keep being creative.